I call Ms. Patten to move her notice of motion 474.
Thank you, President. And I'm very pleased, and I think it's to move motion 474 in my name. And while you can see it on the notice paper, fundamentally it's requesting that the Procedures Committee investigate how we can use our petition process more effectively and, interestingly, more democratically. It recognises that petitions are a fundamental way for Victorians to communicate with the Parliament, to express their grievances, to call on action from this Parliament. But once we receive a petition in this House, what happens to it? Now, I'm very pleased in the previous Parliament we were able to change the petition process to allow for e-petitions. Now, this was pretty much the first time that petitions and the petition system in this Parliament had been changed since Parliament was formed in 1856. And the petition process that we had in 1856, in fact, the petition process that we had in 2017 was very similar to the petition process that we had in the 15th century. So not a lot has changed, and this motion is requesting that the Procedures Committee looks at how we change this, looks at how we can better respond to the growing numbers of petitions that this House is receiving. Now, as of today, this House, since the introduction of e-petitions, has received 335 petitions, albeit not all of them have been tabled in this House. So I'd like to talk about the ones that have been tabled in this House. What has happened to them? I was curious. Where do petitions go once they've been tabled here? Once they've been put on this table, where do they go when they leave this table? Well, they go into a cupboard. They go into the petitions cupboard. It's a very big cupboard, Mr. Atkinson. It's a very big cupboard. In fact, they are never thrown away, I'm assured, by the Reliable Tables Office. They eventually might leave this House, yes. They may leave this House. They may go to some place where we archive all the words and the papers that have come out of this chamber and this Parliament. But they are never destroyed. Unfortunately, what doesn't happen...
Members, I'm struggling to hear Ms. Patten, please. Thank you.
Unfortunately, what doesn't happen is a response. What doesn't happen is an action. Unlike other jurisdictions that have a very robust petition system, and I have to remember that we did speak about this earlier last year, but I would turn to parliaments like Scotland, which have a very robust petition process. And once a petition is tabled there, it goes to a petition committee. And then that committee then makes consideration on what action that committee what action the Parliament should take on that. Now, in Germany, if a petition was to be tabled in the German Parliament and that petition received over 50,000 signatures, there would be a public hearing. There would be a debate about the issue that that petition was to bring to the Parliament. In other parliaments, if it's over 100,000, you could almost say that it needs to get acted on. In fact, that is the rule in the United States, that if there's over 100,000 signatures on a petition, the White House in the United States must act on this. Now, I think what many of the people who petition us would actually like a response. You know, they would like the minister to write to those people. And right now, because we have e-petitions, responding to the people who signed that petition is a relatively simple process. So through changes that I would hope the Procedures Committee will investigate, will consider, we could actually improve the communications between our constituents, between the community in Victoria and this Parliament. Because, as actually has been raised today, the lack of trust in government is ever diminishing. We sit at a very low level of trust for governments in Australia. In fact, that's internationally. And I think readdressing the way we deal with petitions is one way to address that lack of trust with our parliaments, is to show that we actually do care about the considerations of our community, that when they do petition us, we will act, we will respond to what they have called on. Now, this could be a very simple system, and as I said, Scotland has a very sophisticated system, but there are simple processes where a petitions committee could consider whether this might be a reference to one of our standing committees, whether it just requires a ministerial response, or whether it requires a debate in this House. We have, in fact, shortly after this this debate on this motion, we will actually move to statements on petitions and reports. Now, that may be a time that we could formalise the responses to petitions that are brought before us. I certainly noted that Mr Davis had put forward another motion on petitions and asking the Procedures Committee again to consider how we respond to petitions, how we accept petitions. So I would like to I'd like to move, and I don't think there's anyone in disagreement with me, that this motion be agreed to and that the Procedures Committee inquire into, consider and report by the 20th of August on any sessional or standing order changes that would provide reform of petitions, including appropriate measures to require the relevant minister to table a written response to a petition within 14 days of it being tabled, for the Legislative Council to debate the issue raised in a petition upon reaching a certain threshold of petitioners that is to be fixed by the House. This is happening all around the world. This is a modern way. This is what our community expects. When our community puts the effort into petitioning us, then it behoves us to respond to that. It behoves on us to react to that, to act on that. And I think this would go a long way into improving the consideration that our community has of this Parliament. We know this Parliament does some great work. We all see it. We see what happens that's not on the nightly news. We see what happens in our committee processes. We see the consensus that so often occurs in this Parliament. We want to engage. We are constantly asking the question, how do we engage better with our community? And I hear each day, and we all hear each day, the members' statements where we hear all of you talking about your engagement with your community, talking about the issues that your community is raising. And we hear that again through constituency questions, through adjournments. But petitions are where our community raises an issue with us that they want to see acted upon. And I believe that we can do better than what we do now. We can do better than just putting a petition in a petition cupboard and then into an archive. We can respond to those petitions. We can act on those petitions. We can, in this very simple way, show the community that we do hear them. And we want to hear from them. And I know that that is the will of most of us in this chamber. So I'm not sure that there are many other speakers on this motion, but I would... Thank you. Now, there was a very interesting petition that was brought to the White House. It was an American petition. It was some time ago, but they actually wanted to build a Star Wars star to protect them. And they wanted the government to build one of those giant Star Wars stars to protect them. Yeah. Yeah. It received 109,000 signatures for the US government to build a Star Wars star. I'm not using the correct terminology, and maybe Hansard will be able to correct me on at a later date. But they received 109,000. So according to their standing orders, they actually were required to build the Star Wars star. Now, as far as I understand, it didn't actually happen. That's right. It was a shame it didn't happen. However, in other places, we actually see more sensible approaches to this. And we've seen real development in the response to petitions. And we've seen it even in Australia, in jurisdictions such as Queensland. In fact, in our own federal parliament, we have a petitions committee that also considers in much more detail a response to that petition. And in some of those countries and some of those jurisdictions, very nicely, the people who petitioned the parliament are written back to. There is a communication, thank you for petitioning us, and a response to the action that is sought in those petitions. Now, I think that is something that we should consider, and I think the Procedures Committee could do this very well. There's some great work that's been done before us. Certainly the Parliamentary Library has written a terrific report into e-petitions, and it considers what's happening in other jurisdictions. And it goes far and wide, from Luxembourg to the Netherlands to Finland to the Ukraine, Romania, South Korea, the Norway, and even the United Kingdom. All have more robust processes for petitions, and I certainly would like to see greater responses here. You know, our young constituents probably sign petitions on a daily basis. They'd be signing the change.org petitions, the do-gooder petitions, the whole variety of petition processes. They'll be signing petitions on Facebook. But our petitions should stand out from those. Our petitions should really stand out to that this is our community calling on us to act, and we should respond to that. Now, how we respond to that, I think, should be up to the Procedures Committee. I think there's many ways that we could do it, and we can certainly look at the other jurisdictions that are already doing different things and providing different responses depending on the size of the petition. So I know some of us have probably presented a petition with just a handful of signatures. That doesn't mean that we should be silent on that petition. This is still something that we should respond to. I know in my office, I mean, in another form of petition will be the large number of emails that we all receive on certain issues. Now, I try as hard as I can to respond as much as I can to as many of those emails. Sometimes it's not a personal response. Sometimes it may be a group response. Sometimes the emails that I receive are not personal emails. But again, for many people, and I know all of us have received significant representations from our community asking for our help, asking for assistance in some area. Now, we do what we can in this chamber, and we raise these on adjournments. We raise these as constituent questions. We advocate to the various ministers or members of government who might be able to assist our constituents. And petitions is just an extension of that. So I would like to see the Legislative Council, I mean, certainly, look, I'd love to see the Legislative Assembly one day adopt e-petitions. They haven't yet, but I would certainly like to see some changes in the Legislative Assembly. Of course, I have no way of influencing that, but one day, if they could be more like us, Ms. Shing, if they could just be a little bit more like us. But certainly, if they had e-petitions, but most importantly, I would like to see the Procedures Committee, the Legislative Council, investigate how we can more thoughtfully, more carefully and more transparently respond to the petitions that we receive in this House. The petitions where our community has sought our assistance and they have shown the support for the action they seek by either going out and standing at supermarkets and collecting signatures, or going out there online and encouraging people to support the action that they're seeking. And so the action I seek from this motion, and I'm sure, I would hope that we would have the support of this House, to request and require the Procedures Committee to investigate this very important matter and find and recommend ways that we can improve the petition process in the Legislative Council that, as I say, in 2017, it was the first time we'd seen some changes since 1856, and I think in 2021 we can take another step forward in a better procedure for the petitions that this House receives. I commend this motion.